Setting up a business entity in India? Depending on the requirements and circumstances, various types of business entities can be established in India. We will explain the process step by step. Step 1. The first step is to decide on the type of business entity, the registration procedure and associated legal requirements depends on the type of business. We will explain various types of common businesses. Now, types of business entities. First, proprietorship is one of the simplest forms of business entity to register and maintain in India. A startup with a single owner on a small scale might choose this type of business. There is no formal proprietorship registration to start a proprietorship. Only PAN number for the proprietor is required along with a bank account in the name of the proprietorship. Secondly, partnership. The objective of a partnership firm is to pull together people so that more capital, skills and efforts can be brought together. At least 2 members are required to start a partnership business. To register such business, one needs a partnership deed which is duly notarized through a notary. Thirdly, limited liability partnership, which popularly known as LLP, and which is a partnership firm that has its own legal standing. The liability of the partners in an LLP is limited to the investments, and therefore it is called a limited liability partnership LLP, and is governed by the provisions of the LLP Act 2008. The registration of LLP is done through Registrar of Companies, that is ROC. First of all, the partners need to register at ROC and get designated partner identification number, and thereafter they can apply for registration of LLP online. Another option, the private limited company, which is similar to LLP and is a separate legal entity from its directors and owners, being more complex. A private limited company is established only when the business grows significantly, or if a business involves significant capital and efforts. Limited companies are governed by the provisions of the Companies Act 2013. The directors of the company need to register and obtain director's identification number, that is DIN number, and then the application for registration of company may be applied online at ROC website. One-person company is similar to a limited company. Only one person is required who can be a shareholder as well as the director of the company. New concept in India, which had been introduced by the Companies Act 2013 and is useful for small companies with less than 50 lakh rupees annual turnover. Finally, a registered society is managed by a governing body unsuitable to each other. The donors and the registrar of societies are informed on decisions made by the governing body. It is registered under Societies Registration Act 1867. The other category in this is trust, which enables the transfer of ownership from the first person to a second person for the benefit of a third person, and it is governed by a board of trustees. Private trusts are registered under the Indian Trusts Act 1882. Another option is Hindu undivided family, which consists of persons linearly descendant from a common ancestor. HIF is governed by the provisions of Hindu law. A business entity can be registered as an HIF as well. Now that we know the different types of businesses in India, we may choose the one that suits us the most and move to the next step. Step 2. One needs to identify what nature of the business the firm registered in Step 1 would conduct. From export-import perspective, one can choose any one of the options: manufacturer, A manufacturer has a unit which takes in raw materials and processes them to create finished goods. As per the foreign trade policy, manufacture includes processes such as refrigeration, repacking, polishing, labeling, reconditioning, repair, remaking, re-engineering. For manufacturers, you have to obtain registration from MSME or industrial registration as per the capacity of the plant, and also to obtain GST registration, industrial license from Pollution Control Board and fire safety, and such might be applicable depending on the nature and type of manufacturing activities. Merchant. Merchants do not have their own manufacturing setup. Merchants buy goods from a manufacturer or another merchant, and then sell the goods to customers or other merchants or manufacturers in India or abroad. Both merchants and manufacturers are allowed to carry on export-import businesses in India. Merchants need to register with applicable agencies like Goods and Service Tax Authority GST Department. Service provider. Services provider provides intangibles like consultancy services, IT services, BPO services, etc. All service providers need to register with GST Department and pay GST at 18% tax as applicable once the turnover crosses a certain threshold. In addition, they may also register with various service sector associations such as NASCOM, etc. Step 3. Goods and Service Tax. GST registration is a tax registration required for businesses trading or manufacturing goods in India that is collected and governed by the state and central government. GST registration is mandatory if turnover is about 20 lakh rupees depending on the state. Summary: to recap this video, one needs to first decide on the type of business entity, depending on the size, scale and requirements as explained in step 1. Then one needs to register the business entity as detailed in step 1 and step 2. Thereafter, depending on the type of business and turnover, one has to check whether they were required to get their GST registration done. One may refer to the websites of Ministry of Finance, and for availing export-import benefits you can contact www.consultancy.com.